in the Senate. We passed one back in 1982 when the national debt was about $1.1 trillion. And we passed it in the Senate. It was defeated in the House. When we failed by one vote in 1997 to pass a balanced budget amendment that I introduced, the national debt was $5.4 trillion. Today, it's more than $15 trillion, larger than our entire economy. Now, would we be in this fiscal mess that we are in today if Congress had seized one of those previous opportunities and the balanced budget amendment were today part of the Constitution?
I think clearly not.
Well, it's been suggested here that the balanced budget amendment would actually be bad for the American economy. Now, this is surprising to me, given the dire fiscal situation in Europe and in this country brought on by escalating sovereign debt. Now, in your view, what would be the long-term impact on economic growth if a balanced budget amendment that, like we've been discussing here today, if the balanced budget amendment imposed a spending cap on Congress and limited Congress's ability to raise taxes if that was ratified by the American people?
I think the long-run consequences will be entirely beneficial. Over the long term, economies only grow by putting aside resources in the present to have greater physical, technological, or human capital. The persistent federal deficits eat away at that seed corn and undermine long-term economic growth. Keeping taxes low, I think, is part of the recipe for economic growth. The Bowles-Simpson Commission, I thought, clearly pointed the right direction to say if you want to talk about revenue, you need tax reform. I think we could do that within the context of balanced budget amendment. This is the kind of fiscal policy that we need, but we have never been able to consistently generate.
Let me go to Dr. Roth. Which is a greater threat to progress in your viewpoint, such as a greater threat to programs such as Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? The fiscal discipline required by a balanced budget amendment or the spiraling debt that we're actually encountering today?
It's clearly the spiraling debt. We have these entitlement programs that keep growing because, fortunately, we are living longer. We need to adjust them as we go along by raising the retirement age or making other modifications, such as means testing for the benefits. And if we hadn't had, if we had had the balanced budget amendment in place, we might not have been able to spend the $825 billion in stimulus. We might not have had cash for clunkers. We might not have had the TARP program. And in January 2009, Christina Rome and Jared Bernstein had a paper that said that if we did not pass the stimulus package, unemployment would peak at 8% and then go down. So perhaps we would have been a lot better off.
Now, I reviewed some of the floor debate when the Senate has considered balanced budget amendments in the past. In 1994, for example, one of our friends on the other side of the aisle, who also happens to be a member of this committee, said the following, quote, "We do not need a constitutional amendment to balance the budget. As the Cowardly Lion puts it, courage is not something given to you, it comes from within," unquote. Now, that was 1994, when the national debt was $4.5 billion. With a B, less than a third of what it is today. Do you think Congress will find fiscal courage from within, or do you believe it has to be supplied from without a constitutional balanced budget amendment?
Well, they say those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it, and history has showed that Congress does not find the courage to keep to any kind of spending limits, even spending limits it has set upon itself.
Now, Dr. Eaton Holtz-Eakin, BBA opponents predict grave consequences for the economy. We've heard that here from our illustrious witnesses here today. And, of course, specific government programs will be hurt. Now, Mr. Greenstein cites a study that was mentioned often by opponents during the recent House debate. But they all use the same gimmick. They take today's fiscal situation and just slap a ratified balanced budget amendment on top of it. If you stop and think about that, that's not a very fair way to do it. That just seems crazy to me. Had we ratified a BBA in the past, the current economic situation would be very different. And I like your comment on this gimmick that many BBA opponents are using.
I think it's utterly unrealistic and sheds no light on the real issues. The balanced budget amendment is important not because of the extreme cases that are cited. It's the fact that when things are good, Congress can't bring itself to balance the budget, and thus arrives in situations like 2008-9 with a budget that's already badly out of whack, and to pretend that that's sort of the normal starting point you'd want to impose a balanced budget on, I think it's just utterly unrealistic.
And we allow for a period of time to
Yeah.
adjust it.
And
My time's up, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Hatch. Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you.